back with the WMAY morning news feed. Now 6:37. I want to thank my next guest for joining us so early in the morning. State Representative Tim Butler. Representative, thanks for getting up early and being here live in the studio as well.
It's an easy drive for me from the north end,
Yeah. So again, we've got a lot to get to, including an issue that you're very closely watching because you're on the committee, and that deals with congressional maps. Yesterday, Democrats announced that they're going to announce hearings for the new congressional maps. We already know Illinois is going to lose a seat. What else do we know?
Well, we don't know a whole heck of a lot. At least publicly, we don't know a whole heck of a lot. I think this, just to remind everybody, we drew the legislative maps for the State House previously and redid the Supreme Court maps in the spring as well. But we haven't done the congressional maps yet. As you said, we've lost a seat in Illinois. We go from 18 seats to 17 seats. And after every census, we have to redistrict and draw the new lines. The Democrats supposedly are saying, we've opened our map portal again, that people can submit maps. And we know from the spring that it's a very clunky process to try to do that. In my opinion, look, I think the Democrats already have the maps drawn, the congressional maps drawn. They've had the data since the middle of August to be able to draw that. And I think nothing underscores that more than the fact that one of Governor Pritzker's former top aides, has already announced that she's running for Congress against Rodney Davis, and we don't even know what the district is.
Right.
I mean, at least the public doesn't know what the district is. We as Republicans don't know what the district is. So I think that underscores the idea that the Democrats have already drawn the maps, or they know largely exactly how they're going to draw the maps if they're having one of Governor Pritzker's top people announce for Congress and start raising money. I mean, that's just insane to think that that's the fact. So I think we're going to see congressional maps probably passed in the veto session coming up in 3 weeks. And my guess is, unfortunately, those of us, the public, and those of us in the Republican Party probably won't see the maps until the night before we vote on them, which is the same thing that the Democrats did in the spring.
Well, and they could be amended even after that.
Yeah,
right?
I know there's a different standard for the congressional maps on a couple levels than there is the legislative maps. In the Constitution, it spells out the process for the legislative maps, which is one of the reasons we're talking about the court case. But the June 30th deadline around effective maps is in the Constitution for the legislative maps, whereas for the congressional maps, there's no similar requirement. Also, the standard for one of the reasons why the Democrats didn't draw the congressional maps in the spring, the standard for congressional maps as far as population deviation is higher for congressional maps. They knew they couldn't draw the maps in the spring given the use of American Community Survey data. They had to wait until the actual data came out because the standard basically is to the person. You have to draw congressional maps equal in population almost to the person, and there's more of a deviation in the legislative maps. So look, I think they've got these maps drawn. I think we're going to see them, late. And you're right. I mean, they could come back and amend them in December or something like that. As you know, as most people know, the primary election was pushed until the end of June 28th of next year, which means the filing process, the circulation for petitions to get on the ballot starts January 13th. So, things are moving, but still certainly would give time for the Democrats to continue to play games on this.
And just so people are clear, you've got the state legislative maps, and those are embroiled in a federal lawsuit with a hearing coming up, I think, October 7th. And you've got, the Republicans and MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, suing to challenge those state house maps. What we're talking about now is the congressional maps. That would be those members of Congress. And again, Illinois losing a seat because of population loss. So it's still unclear which congressional district's going to be punished because of that. I
mean, the Democrats control the process here in Illinois. They have, obviously Governor Pritzker, who once again said he's not going to sign maps drawn by politicians, but we're going to see him probably sign again. And they have supermajorities in the General Assembly. So you're going to see Republicans combined. You're going to see Rodney Davis and Mary Miller and Adam Kinzinger and Darren LaHood and Mike Boss somehow drawn into districts together. The combination of them. The other thing that I think is going to be really interesting, and this is part of the lawsuit from the legislative maps, is that the Latino population in the state has gone up substantially whereas the white population has gone down and the black population has remained stagnant. Yet, are they going to create another Latino congressional seat? That's the basis of the federal lawsuit as well. Is that there's not enough Latino legislative seats right now. There's one Latino majority congressional seat. Chuy Garcia holds that. And I think a lot of us believe that there should be two now, given the I think the Latino population of the state is somewhere north almost of 20% now, and so that's going to be a real interesting thing because there's power struggles within the Democratic caucus about these issues, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out.
Well, we had yesterday the Illinois African Americans for Equitable Redistricting on the show, or earlier this week after the governor signed the legislative maps, and they said the Democrats are just being greedy. Yeah. Right now, they just said that they had the supermajority. They want even more power in the state legislature. Are you worried that same thing's going to play out in congressional maps?
Absolutely. I mean, Illinois and New York are really the two playgrounds for Nancy Pelosi to try to keep her majority. And with such thin majorities in the U.S. House of Representatives, this is a real battleground. And if the Democrats can pick up a seat in Illinois, eliminate a Republican seat in Illinois, it could really make a difference in who controls the U.S. House of Representatives in 2023. So, this is a real battleground because the Democrats don't have a lot of other states where they have the ability to control the map making process like they do in Illinois. And so the Nancy Pelosi's team, I mean, literally, I think they're on the ground here in Illinois, trying to figure all this stuff out to try to help her retain her speakership.
With the legislative maps, there was that June 30th deadline. Does that not apply here?
No, it doesn't. The Constitution, the Illinois Constitution, those requirements are only for the legislative maps. And the difference is, I think when they created the Constitution 50 years ago was that federal versus state issues. You have some legal issues around the congressional maps that you don't necessarily have around the legislative maps. So I think it was easier to put those restrictions around the legislative maps.
We're talking with State Representative Tim Butler at 6:45 here on the WMAY Morning News Feed. I'm Greg Bishop. Representative, something else I wanted to bring you on to talk about was the FOID card issue. We've got an audit that's expected out from the Illinois Auditor General today about the management of FOID and CCL. When we talk about it on the air, I get people calling up. I get people messaging me, still waiting, months. I had somebody message me the other weekend saying it was almost 2 years before they finally got their card back. I joked and said, was your picture the one on it? Right? Because we've heard those stories.
Right, yeah.
So I mean, give us your assessment of what's happened in the past 2 years with FOID.
First, I would say if people are continuing to have concerns about their FOID card applications, feel free to contact our office or your legislator's office. And, we make inquiries on this every day. It is now gone back up to our number one casework issue now that IDS seems to be going back in the background a little bit. But look, I think, this is going to continue to be an issue. We can't, well, first of all, I think we just need to get rid of the FOID card. I think in today's environment where we have instant background checks and, I bought a handgun last year, went through the process, got the background check, waited the 72 hours. You didn't need a FOID card to make that purchase with that kind of stuff in place. But short of that, I do think the state police is making strides. But
they say they've, I've got the press release they released yesterday, they've reduced backlogs by 89% for renewals, 75% for new applications. Is that enough, though? I mean, because that means
the biggest thing.
The way I read that is, the remainder of those that are being delayed, their rights are being denied.
I 100% agree with you. I've made that point to the state police that you are violating people's constitutional rights by not having this, especially new applicants that have to wait. If you're applying for your renewal of your card, at least we have it in place where that card gets extended, even though you don't get the new card in the mail. But for new applicants, we're literally violating their constitutional rights. I mean, I think you need to have immediate approval of those cards. We need to make it better. I will say, again, I think the state police are making strides. We found out a couple years ago that we've, swept a bunch of money from the fund, which needs to stay in there. And I know they've hired, I think I saw that news release, they've hired 30, 35 people, something like that. And that's the key. I think they needed more bodies just to process some of the stuff and put the systems in place to make it better. Look, I had this thought because I applied for my Real ID a couple months ago. What you might think of the driver services facilities in SOS, they actually do a pretty good job of turning over your driver's licenses. How come we can't have that same emphasis on something like a FOID card when it's so, how can, I hate to say this, but do you let SOS take over the FOID card process because they actually have a system in place to deal with something like that? I don't know, but we got to continue to be on top of this. And I'll be really interested to see what the Auditor General has to say in the audit about this, because this is such a huge issue for so many people, and we've seen over the past year, especially a spike, and I think that the state police said that in their news release, a huge spike in applications because of a variety of reasons. And again, this is a constitutional right, and that at the end of the day, that's what we all need to realize, that we need to do everything we can to make sure that people's constitutional rights are defended and people are able to exercise them.
State Representative Tim Butler with us on the WMAY morning news feed. And just finally here, this ongoing conversation with school districts, with teachers, with even, the Fraternal Order of Police, opposing vaccine mandates, and some ramifications and some outcomes that we're seeing play out from lawsuits being filed. There's a story out of the Belleville News Democrat of Edwardsville teacher filing lawsuits using the HCRCA. We didn't know about this law that passed back in 97, enacted in 98, until a couple of months ago when somebody, raises it. But now it seems to be it's going to be a sticking issue coming up for the fall veto session. Yep. What needs to happen with this, and is that the law of the land that people should follow, or does it need to be changed?
I don't think anything needs to happen. I talked to the Med Society last night at an event. I talked to a representative of the Medical Society. They're very concerned about any potential changes to the act. The Healthcare Right of Conscience Act, because they see the huge ramifications that could have for folks in that they represent. Look, I think at the end of the day, first of all, people need to get vaccinated. That's I've said that all along. People just need to get vaccinated. But decisions like the school board decisions, local decisions on the police forces and stuff like that needs to be made on the local. School districts were doing this past summer. They were making their plans for the fall, and then the governor comes in at the last minute, 2 weeks before school is supposed to start, and puts these mandates in place. I think it needs to be up to the locals to determine. And a lot of the school folks that I've talked to, the school administrators, that's really the hope that they would have had. That That's why you elect local school boards. Your locally elected officials should be making those decisions. It shouldn't be coming on high from the governor saying this is exactly what we need to do. Let the locals decide on that. And you'd still have back and forth on it. You'd still have people, on both sides of this, but at least it'd be something that would be done by your locally elected school boards and not the governor sitting somewhere just making these decisions.
Do you think that Democrats will try to amend the HCA?
I am really concerned about this. I'm really concerned about what they might try to codify as far as the governor's powers when it comes to this.
But what does that say, that we're 20 months into this, and this is the thing that they're going to come back and deal with?
This is one of the things that I think all of us have been most amazed about, that Speaker Madigan and now Speaker Welch, President Harmon have basically washed their hands of any involvement with being involved with the pandemic. We haven't had any oversight hearings hardly at all about the processes in the pandemic. We haven't decided as a legislature to act as a co-equal branch of government. The governor has just gone out on his own, has done this, and the Democratic majorities have liked that because they haven't had to make a decision about it. They haven't had to be put on record saying we're for this or we're against this, and that's wrong. The legislature should be taking a role in this, and the history of our country is about legislators helping drive the policy of this country, and we've taken a complete backseat. We took what did we pass? 650 some
plus
bills
right.
that are sitting on the governor's desk or have been signed. And really, none of them had to do with the pandemic. It's pretty insane.
Or the governor's orders unilaterally to shape and form the economy.
It's pretty insane to think that that's how we did it in the middle of this.
You guys tackled something as complex as energy,
exactly.
But you can't touch on the governor's powers in a pandemic.
I think that absolutely underscores the desire of the leadership, the Democratic leadership of the legislature, just to wash their hands of it and let the governor take all the heat for it. I think that's exactly what it is.
State Representative Tim Butler, we'll have to talk more about this as we get closer to fall veto session because it just one good turn deserves another, and that's coming up in just a couple of weeks. So greatly appreciate your time this morning.
Absolutely. Thanks.
It is the WMAY morning news feed, and now it's time.